So, what if you could test a new medicine on thousands of patients, but without a single person ever having to swallow a pill? Imagine if you could predict whether a drug will succeed or fail years ahead of schedule and for just a fraction of the cost. I know it sounds like something straight out of science fiction, but researchers at Mayo Clinic are making it a reality. They've built a groundbreaking AI that's basically a flight simulator, but for discovering new medicines. Now, to really get why this is such a huge deal, we have to start with the people. That number you're looking at, over 6 million, that's how many Americans are living with heart failure right now. It is a leading cause of hospitalization and, sadly, death. And for decades, the search for new, better treatments has been just painfully slow. The stakes here are incredibly high. And a big reason for that slow pace? Well, a traditional drug trial is an absolute marathon. I mean, we are talking about more than a decade of work. The cost easily blows past $1 billion. And even after all of that time and all of that money, there's a staggeringly high risk that the drug just fails in the final stages. It's an enormous gamble of time, money, and frankly, hope. This whole process creates what you could call a billion-dollar bottleneck. It's this fundamental barrier that really slows down medical progress. It tells us that we don't just need new drugs. What we really need is a completely new way to find them in the first place. Now, there is one clever shortcut researchers have been using, and it's called drug repurposing. The idea is actually brilliant. You take a drug that's already approved for something, let's say blood pressure, and you test if it also works for heart failure. Since its safety profile is already known, you get to skip huge parts of the development process. You save a ton of time and money. But that leads to another massive problem. There are literally thousands of approved drugs on the market. So which one do you pick? If you pick the wrong one, that's another failed trial. You could waste years chasing a complete dead end. How do you know where to place your bet? And that is the exact question that Mayo Clinic's incredible AI framework is built to answer. This is where we shift from the problem to a truly elegant solution, the virtual trial. Let's dig into how it actually works. Okay, so it's a really powerful three-step process. First, the AI dives into this massive treasure trove of data, the real electronic health records from nearly 60,000 heart failure patients. Second, it uses these super sophisticated models to predict how different drugs might interact with the human body on a biological level. And finally, and this is the magic, it puts all of that together to emulate a clinical trial. It creates virtual patient groups to test a drug's potential, all happening inside a computer. Really, the absolute best way to think about this is as a flight simulator for medicine. You know, before a pilot ever flies a real multi-million-dollar jet, they spend hundreds of hours in a simulator. They test every possible scenario in a totally safe, controlled environment. Well, this AI is doing the exact same thing, but for billion-dollar drugs. Of course, an idea this big is only as good as its results. A simulator is pretty useless if it doesn't actually reflect reality, right? So the researchers had to put their AI to the ultimate test. They decided to see if it could accurately predict the past. And they didn't go small. The team identified 226 major real-world heart failure trials. These are huge studies that had already been finished. The outcomes, whether the drugs worked or not, were already known. This gave them the perfect benchmark to test their AI against. So, this was the moment of truth. Could their flight simulator, with its virtual patients and its AI models, run its own versions of these 226 trials and come to the same conclusions? The same conclusions that researchers had spent billions of dollars and decades to discover in the real world? And the answer was yes, it worked. The virtual trials successfully predicted the direction of the real-world results. What that means is the AI could consistently tell them if a drug was likely to be helpful or not. This was just a massive validation of their entire approach. The lead researcher, Dr. Nansu Zhang, said it perfectly. This wasn't just some clever academic project. This model has the potential to fundamentally change how drug development is done, guiding pipelines toward the most promising drugs and away from the likely failures on a huge scale. And you know, the implications here are even bigger than just this one model for this one disease. This work isn't just a new tool, it's really the start of a whole new paradigm, a new way of thinking about how medical research can even be done. This new way of thinking opens up at least 3 powerful new approaches. You have trial emulation, which is basically rerunning an old trial on the computer to check the results. Then there's trial simulation, which lets you test how a drug might work in completely new groups of virtual patients. And maybe the most game-changing of all is synthetic trials, where data from virtual patients could one day reduce the need for people to participate in certain studies. So, let's bring this all home. What does this mean for the future of drug discovery? And more importantly, why does a technology like this really matter for every single one of us? At the end of the day, it all boils down to this: a faster, cheaper, and de-risked path for new medicines. That directly translates into more treatments, more potential cures, and just more hope for patients who are suffering from countless diseases. By making the whole process smarter, we can accelerate progress for everybody. And that really leaves us with one final, profound thought. For years, we've been looking for new cures in petri dishes and in labs, but with tools like this one, what if the next life-saving drug we've all been waiting for isn't new at all? What if it's already sitting on a pharmacy shelf, just waiting for the right technology to come along and reveal its true potential?